Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started with our final session for the day. I know that it has been a long day, but we are excited to, definitely get with our last session and then take a small break and get ready for our evening activities. So I thank you all for just participating with us today and being here. And our session this afternoon is Rethinking Recreation and Parks. And again, my name is Jiza Page, and I am a member of Columbus City Council. And I'd like to thank you, President Pro Tem, for what you've done in bringing NBC Leo here. It was a great experience just planning this conference, and we are so excited to have you here. And really, the thought behind this workshop came from myself and my colleague, Councilmember Shannon Hardin, and one of our close friends, Mr. Randall Sistrunk. We were just sitting and thinking about things that we could present to you all and talk about that have been effective in our city and ways that we can continue to collaborate, particularly around our youth and our communities where our youth are underprivileged, underserved, and our recreation and park system, I think, is absolutely amazing. We are doing a lot of unique things, and that really came from the panel that we have before us, where they were talking about being creative and what are some different things that we can do to really begin to affect change, to do a lot with this systemic racism that we see, and really begin to build communities. And I remember last year I was at an event, and a young guy came up to me and he said, "Ms. Page, what is our recreation and park system doing? I know that me being able to go and play basketball at one of our recreation centers really changed my life." And so that's something that I've kept close to my heart, and just working really closely with our administration and our recreation and parks department to figure out what we can do to continue to work with our youth and really build them up educationally, health programs, and just helping them be leaders in our community. So I'd like to bring up to the podium Mr. Eric Brandon. He is an assistant director in the department, and this is going to be more of a presentation style rather than a panel, and then we will have question and answers at the end. So let's welcome Mr. Brandon. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. I'm happy to be here and to share some information with you about our great department. I do understand this is the last session of the day. I'm not sure what I did to Councilmember Page to earn that, but we'll get through it, and hopefully we'll share some information that is of interest to you. So grab my clicker here. I am born and raised in Columbus, and consider myself a product of our Columbus and Recreation and Parks system. It certainly was an influence on my early stages, and so the occupation and my role here with the department is something that I'm really happy to have, and it's just part of my life. So we're going to get going. Rethinking Recreation and Parks. Slide one, most of you have some reference of recreation and parks experiences. It might be Boys and Girls Club, it might have been the Y, maybe your local recreation and park system in your municipality. Sports, athletics, arts, crafts, camps, swimming, games, and hopefully positive mentorships were part of your experience. Recreation and park systems are common partners with summer food. Going the wrong way. Yeah. Recreation and parks systems are common partners with summer food programs. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But our peers like the YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs have historically been more involved in family development and programming, delivering and providing connections to services, et cetera, than perhaps your municipalities and local recreation systems. That may be in part because municipalities have other offices and other departments that are delivering some of those services, safety, health, maybe in the Office of Human Services. Another reason may be centered around the philosophical debate in terms of what government's role should be with those social issues. Well, recreation and parks systems, especially a large system like ours here in Columbus, have the opportunity to deliver or at least partner with the delivery of social and developmental programs and services. Outside of the city of Columbus, CRPD, Columbus Recreation and Parks Department, engages more youth and families and has more facilities than any other entity short of the Columbus City school system. And most service providers, nonprofit, et cetera, will tell you accessibility and convenience is a major barrier to participation. So regardless of one's philosophy on what our role should be, certainly I think what's palatable is that we can use our facility footprint to make social programs and services available to our residents by partnering with those agencies that provide those services. At a high level, we believe our recreation and park system has three primary pillars: conservation, social equity, and health and wellness. No doubt conservation would be considered a more traditional role for our department. We do a lot of that. We have nature preserves and areas that we dedicate as a nature preserve. We have greenways and waterways development, parkland dedication, where we identify green space and parkland for new developments around the outskirts of our city to make sure that those residents have green spaces and recreational opportunities. And we also focus on acquisition. So we have partners such as Metro Parks that do more in conservation and providing passive recreation options. So when we look at passive versus active recreation, we're talking about a recreation center, sports and athletic leagues and those type of activities versus maybe a green space where folks might just be walking or just enjoying that environment. Social equity. The state of affairs in which all people within a specific society or isolated group have the same status in certain respects, often including civil rights, freedom of speech, property rights, and equal access to social goods and services. For most of us, or at least my role in government, we're not just interested in social equity, we're interested in the sustainability. In 2010, the International City-County Management Association conducted a sustainable policies and programs survey with local governments and found most local governments were still in the early stages of addressing sustainability. Most placed emphasis on long-standing areas of commitment such as recycling, environment, or energy conservation. But only a minority of governments were adopting measures to promote social equity. Without such programs, they are not strengthening their social foundation for long-term viability. Our conversation today goes a step further. We're not just talking about the level of effort or financial commitment made by government, but the strategy and philosophy behind utilizing the municipality's recreation and park system to engage youth and families via partnerships, programs, connections to services, and resources. Our third pillar, health and wellness, is probably the core function people think of first when it comes to recreation and parks. Perhaps you didn't consider all of the bubbles shown here representing so many areas of one's health and well-being. Not sure if you can read all of those, but it says social, emotional, occupational, multicultural, environmental, spiritual, intellectual, and physical. Our traditional program may naturally address several of these areas, but some require very focused and very intentional efforts, along with some creativity to really have an impact. In June of 2015, the city hired Tony Collins as the Recreation and Parks Director. 1 month later, in July, the Division of Youth and Family Development was created. Director Collins saw the value in the programs and the need to institutionalize them for sustainability and impact, and to promote a culture of equity in the way we deliver all of our programs and services as a department. And we become a catalyst in balancing social inequities. And here are some of the core services that frame the division. You see health and wellness, and we believe that all of these things fit under that umbrella. And so with institutionalizing the effort, our core services, you see them kind of reflected there. They're broad and general enough to be very inclusive and encompass a lot of areas, but we feel like those are our focuses that we have in the area of the Youth and Family Development Division. Here are some of the sections that make up the Division of Youth and Family Development. We have our Food Access Office, our Capital Kids program, our Applications for Purpose, Pride, and Success, and our Outreach Office. Each of them fit within 3 or more of the core services from the previous slide. It's important to note that none of these programs are new. The Food Office, Capital Kids, and APS all existed in our Community Recreation Division, and Outreach was part of our administration. Putting these efforts under one division thrusts us into a better communication, coordination of services, and allows us to better serve our community. For example, the Food Office may provide temporary relief of a symptom, but connecting participants and their families to a network of other programs and services may help address why our youth are hungry in the first place and help us find solutions to break those cycles. So our Food Access Office. We formerly referred to our Food Access Office as Summer Food, but we have been moving away from that because we provide much more than just the summer food program. We have produce drops, hot meals served throughout the school year in many of our sites. We have many of our sites where we're actually cooking meals on sites. We're sending some of our participants home with groceries every 2 weeks, and we're facilitating produce drops all over the city. We also have, so the photo there in the center and then the top left is a picture of our food truck. And so we have a mobile food truck, and we've been using that. That's been a great asset for us. And what we've been doing is using that mobile food truck to flush out need or to explore deltas where we don't have a site to host the food program. So we can go into a community, we send out canvassers a week ahead of time to put the information out, and then we'll follow up with the truck and see if there's a need in that community. If there is, we'll continue to deliver there, and then we'll work during the off-season to find a site, a partner to be a site in that community, or if we have a nearby park where we can staff that park and continue the program at that location. But the truck has been a great resource to help us flush out those deltas where there is need, and obviously it's been a great marketing tool as well. Former Mayor Michael Coleman created Capital Kids, an after-school enrichment program, in 2000. It was the first year of his first term. It was operated from the mayor's education office, and when that office dissolved, the program was moved to Recreation and Parks. We already hosted the sites in 4 of our community recreation centers, and since then it's just been a natural fit. We also host Head Start programs in many of our facilities. So that's an example of, in some areas, we're providing the service, and in other areas, we're partnering with community agencies that are providing the service with us. Project Mentor is a Big Brothers Big Sisters mentoring program, and the city has partnered with them. This office drives that program as well. City Leaders is a 10-month development program for middle school age youth. They are exposed to a myriad of leaders and elected officials, social and cultural awareness, public speaking, and even the heritage tour of HBCUs and landmarks over spring break. The APS program is the anchor of the division. It was also created by former Mayor Coleman in 2011. So if you see a little pattern here, it really has a lot to do with leadership. Once the programs were created, the opportunity existed to pull them together under one division and institute a long-term commitment. APS is a comprehensive youth development program. The primary age group is 14 to 24, but we are committed to serving the entire family. It's interesting because obviously we have to have some range. And we found that around age 14 is when we typically lose our youth. So those young folks that regularly participate in our programs and come to our facilities for activities, usually about 13 when they get in that space where they may come, they may not. So we need to be more intentional about that age group. After 24, young adult age, we have folks that are coming back, starting to use our parks, having children, bringing them back, renting our athletic complexes, playing in adult leagues. So we get some of those folks back and participants back in the mid-20s. So we needed to be very targeted about our age group. However, when we're asked about the age range for apps, I always caution with the answer because we know that we can't really change a young person's life if we're not addressing the whole family unit. And so what we're doing is using that 14 to 24-year-old age range to get access, okay? That's the target, that's our entry point. And so when we build relationship and build rapport with that young person and start to figure out what their needs are in the home, what the needs are of their siblings or their parents, it gives us a lot of information and allows us to be more responsive to that young person and connect them to the services and programs they need. We also want to be conscious of the fact that while we're dealing with a 14 or 15-year-old, that they may have a 10 or 11-year-old or a younger sibling at home, and we want to get our arms around them and provide some safety net long before they find themselves in a dire situation. So we have, you see the neighborhood violence intervention piece. It is a part of the APPS program. That is the part where we have partners, community partners. We contract with 2 agencies that through which we employ violence interventionists. And so they have zones. We've broken up the city and have those vendors working in concert together. We'll deploy them as needed. They might be at the state fair, they're at malls, they're at Easton, they're at community events and festivals and those type of things, but typically they have their zones and they work those zones. They work those zones in concert with the recreation centers in those areas and communicate with the staff in those areas about issues or young folks, and we can refer within that bubble for case management. Those 2 community agencies also provide case management for us. Mentorship, engagement, and rapport building through targeted developmental programs help us promote positive behavior and prevent and reduce violence. When violence does occur, interventionists respond in an effort to prevent retaliation and interrupt the violent pattern. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the APPS program. We have the ability and this separated funding from community rec, and that allows us to be very targeted with the programs that we create. And so when we engage young folks who are not in our centers and we ask them, what is it that you're interested in? What would get you into the center? What is it that you're interested in that we don't offer? That allows us to take dedicated dollars, find that programming, find that facilitator or the instructor, and deliver that program to that particular community, which might look a little different than the corporate way we might provide recreational programs from our community rec. So we want to have that discretion to be very intentional and very specialized so we can reach youth that might have different interests from one community to the next so that we can engage them and get them our arms around them. As mentioned earlier, especially in large cities, the recreation and park system touches more youth and families than any other entity short of that city's primary school system. And that means we have to be a leader in the effort of providing programs and services and making those social and less traditional recreational programs accessible through partnerships to move our communities forward. And so here, the other office that we have in youth and family development is outreach. So we don't just serve the one division with outreach, though. We're going out with all of our programs and opportunities, facilities, recreational opportunities, job opportunities. We just take information out about our department we're at job fairs, we're at community events, but we're also walking into barbershops, and we're in schools, and we're out visible trying to figure out, do people know about the recreation and park system, and what is it that you think you know? What we found is folks know what they know, right? So whatever you've been exposed to, whether it's in your youth or as a young adult, the programming, the specific activities that you were interested in, that you gravitated to, that's where we find that's the limitation of our adults' knowledge, or our young adults' knowledge about what we offer. And so what we want to make sure is that whether you're interested in it or not, or whether that's your thing, but that you are aware of the complete breadth of opportunities that our department offers, then we believe that there is something that we can engage every young person with. So, we think that, as I said, we have the footprint. We have 30 recreation centers around the city of Columbus. We have 240 developed parks. So what we consider a developed park, it would at least have a playground. So if it doesn't have a playground, it's not developed. And so we have 240 of them, over 400 parcels of parkland. So you might have parkland that we've acquired, that we might develop in the future, or parkland that we acquired just for the sake of preservation. But we have a large footprint. And that means we have to be a leader in the effort of providing programs and services and making those programs available. And if we're not going to provide the program, certainly we have an opportunity to partner with a community agency that we can eliminate a barrier and bring the agency and their service to that community by giving them space in our recreation center, and really eliminate the reason or the excuse for our residents to not take advantage of that program or service. Now, what this looks like in your community may vary, but we believe the key is to hold decision makers accountable to institutionalize your efforts. And so moving forward, here in the city of Columbus, we would like to be the catalyst in this region for bringing stakeholders together to increase communication, coordination, efficiency, and overall sophistication of our strategic efforts to work together as a community to deliver services strategically, to deliver services in a particular community until we've reached our desired outcomes before we move on. And so we're still in some developmental stages of the APPS program, and obviously the division itself is young, but we have some very grand aspirations about being a leader in this community, in this region. And one reason why I'll say that is, so the previous discussion was about my brother's keeper. There have been the Starbucks Opportunity Youth process and other processes that engage communities, engage residents, engage youth, brought folks together for a conversation. And you have, being a part of both of those processes is really encouraging to see the Columbus community come out and support those things and express and demonstrate their concern in those areas for our young people. The issue is that as soon as the conversation is over, folks go back to their jobs. And it's fair, you know, the issues on the table impact all of these stakeholders, but each one of those representatives in the room have another priority that their employer expects them to do on a daily basis. And so who is there to continue the conversation and to be that nucleus in the center of the wheel where all of these spokes are going out to all of these community agencies, and that there is someone there funded to continue to drive those efforts and then the decisions or action items that come out of those sessions and those exercises where the community has come together to share ideas. And we feel that that's us. We feel the APPS program feels that that's us. The Division of Youth and Family Development feel that that is us. And so we now feel like through the commitment and support of our city council members, our administration, that we now have an entity that's there to stay, that's there to be in the center of the wheel and to continue to drive these things, not because we're necessarily experts in everything, but because we are engaged with the kids and we have the footprint and the facilities to either deliver the services or partner with agencies that can. And that's my presentation. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
2 quick questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me, in your produce, Rappahannock City of Trotwood,
Yes, sir.
Ohio.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how many pounds of produce you drop or how many tons you drop in the community? Because that's important, because many of our communities are food deserts. And the second question is, how has the Ashboard academic affected your trees and your park system, and what have you done about it?
Wow, okay. The first question, I don't know the poundage, but what I can tell you is that out of our 30 recreation centers, 12 of them are produce sites. We have our food office manager, so I don't have those stats with me today, but we do have 12 of our 30 centers are produce sites. And we have a good mix. We have our Capital Kids programs that's in 4 sites, and they're actually cooking hot meals at the end of the day. And then we have other programs that are receiving groceries. And so there's a kind of a mix that we've spread around, but we have just today had a meeting about our food office, and we're looking to increase our resources. But if I could elaborate a little bit further, the summer food grant that we get, that a lot of cities get from the Department of Agriculture, is very thin, okay? And so it barely covers staff and marketing. That's it. And so the city of Columbus has leveraged additional dollars so that we can have a food office manager year round. And that gives us someone to drive the produce drops and the hot meals, and to provide compliance checks to make sure that we're doing things right so that we can continue to exercise those programs. And so that is something, an additional commitment that the city of Columbus has made, and that's allowed us to go further and beyond just the summer food piece. So as we continue to develop that, we'll be adding numbers to those sites and looking for greater impact. The Emerald Ash Borer has been something that our community has been fighting for 12 years now. And so we have, it has really changed a lot of things for us. It came through the city from the Northeast quadrant, so from upper New Albany, and started migrating through our north side and through the south. It has really devastated some of our street canopy, and it's taught us that we need to diversify our canopy and to not have one particular type of tree down the street, because if it's infected, it'll wipe out the whole street. It has had a huge impact on our parks. We have, over the past 8 or 10 years, we've been contracting with outside agencies, and so we've had to get additional funding from City Council, who has allowed us to exercise those contracts. In some cases, we've increased our own teams and increased some of our own equipment, but it's been a dual effort. The contractors, they come through, they remove. There's another set of contractors that come through and grind the stumps. And so it is just a constant process. Our folks tell us now we are probably 5 or 6 years away still from getting on the other side of the issue.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I want to commend you for using your recreation centers as locations for your, I guess you'd say, fresh fruits and produce.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
My city is Fort Worth, Texas, and my mayor is determined to have us be declared or designated a blue zone city, which I support. But blue zones came into part of my district, which is an inner city part, without much coordination, and they won a grant from the APA, American Planning Association, and the idea was to find convenience stores or find stores already in existence and convince them to start selling more fresh fruits and produce. Mm-hmm. And so without interaction from the community, they located a corner store, but it was right across the street from the drug dealer's office, which is the empty car wash. And so I explained to them, so now I've got to get enhanced police presence because you just came in here without talking to anyone. And I don't know what the grant provides for or the guidelines, but the idea of using the community or the recreation centers, it didn't really take a stroke of genius, but I commend you for it because we didn't do it that way in my city. I'm going to take this back to them, but congratulations on that.
Thank you. We have a pretty elaborate senior program, 50-plus program. We have multi-generational centers, so we have 5 dedicated centers that have additional and extended hours and programming for our seniors. And so that is something that we know that they can benefit from, as well as our young folks. And so we're excited about expanding that program and the opportunity to have to gain an additional resource to work on those programs. As while summer food is important, it's 2.5 months out of the year. And I think that when we focus on summer food, it starts to give us the impression that because school is in session, that hunger doesn't exist. The other thing on top of that is we're starting to find that simply counting numbers or simply counting how many folks are eligible for free or reduced lunch throughout the school year compared to how many meals we're serving throughout the summer is probably skewing our information, because it makes us feel like, well, we're only serving a fraction of those that are eligible throughout the school year, so our children dying of starvation. No, they're not. They're coming back to school in August. So it makes us start thinking about, is it food, is it hunger, or is it nutrition? And so we're starting to lean in that area because we know there are kids that might be eligible for free or reduced lunch throughout the school year, and during the summer, they have enough money for a bag of chips and a pop. So they might not come to our food program if it's strictly about hunger. But if it's about nutrition, we need to find other ways to attract them. Yes, ma'am.
Could someone just tell me what is a blue zone city?
There's this guy who did a study, and he found out that people live longer, up to 100 years and older, in certain spots across the globe. And there were some things that they had in common. They had a sense of community, they had a sense of education, and a sense of spiritual, what we would call God. And when you've got that, you've got the components for a real good community, and you live longer. But that also includes what you eat, who you interact with, if you interact. And so we have adopted that, and we have a number of companies in Fort Worth now, and a number of restaurants that are serving Blue Zones diet, which is not the stuff that minority communities typically eat. You'll see more fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm going to be doing a video pretty soon featuring my garden. I have a huge garden. And my garden is bigger than some community gardens. And I do it all by myself. And so, not knowing it, I was part of the Blue Zones family in the beginning. But when you Google the book Blue Zones, you'll be asked some things that help you determine what drives you, what inspires you. And for me, it's good, it's gardening and God. But the main thing is knowing the components of a good community. And when you've got a community where you have more single families, more single parent-led families than a mom and a dad, you're kind of striking out against it already. But it's just the idea of longevity, quality of life, and what this guy found that contributed to that. That's a real earthy way of defining it, but that's basically what it is.
Oh, wow.
We find in our community that there's a shortage of volunteers to make up the difference in what needs to happen.
We have
Starting FaceTime with at Hamilton Road. Other.
So we have a phenomenal community of volunteers. Every year we track those hours at a market rate, so we have an actual monetary value of what those volunteers mean to our department, and it is probably $1.5 to $1.6 million in what we would pay in fair market salary for the efforts that our volunteers bring. So we're blessed to have an excellent community in that regard. I was going to make one final comment, a little bit of brag on the department about a plan that we have that would involve using our space, a gardening program in produce. We have a facility that we call Smith Farm. It has a lot of land and a lot of green space. We've thought about allowing other entities to farm on it. And now we're thinking about, well, the city participates with the Summer Youth Employment Program, and there's been some talk about our team taking over that program. And if that were to happen, we have some incredible ideas about increasing our produce program, finding teams that want to work in agriculture, and kind of completing that cycle where we're producing more produce for the community and employing youth at the same time. And I just want to share that, and that's an idea that our chair, Councilmember Page, has been supportive of, and we hope that that comes to fruition. No pressure, Councilmember Page.
Each of our recreation centers has a volunteer.
We have a program called the Community Recreation Council. It is one nonprofit with chapters attached to each one of our recreation centers. They help provide park cleanups. They help raise money for Halloween and Christmas parties and candy for Easter, and just really they help us purchase more fitness equipment for our centers. So that is an institutionalized volunteer program. But we also have just volunteers who like to commit to us, and they reach out to us, and we track those as well. So.
Well, let's give Assistant Director Brandon a hand. Thank you so much. We are right at our 5 o'clock mark. Again, thank you all for coming to this last session. As the Chair of Recreation and Parks and President Pro Tem Tyson chaired this committee as well, it just really tugs on my heartstrings, just how we're touching our young people, we're touching also our elderly community as well. And we just want to continue to provide access to our centers, programs, and resources to keep them healthy, to keep them active, and to create strong leaders for our city. So again, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.